All right, I can't wait any longer to talk about Garfield, so we're doing that one first. Garfield like food. Garfield eat food. Garfield was abandoned by his father in an alley as a young child, leading to the onset of an eating disorder and subsequent attachment issues for the rest of his life. Garfield and Odie get kidnapped by this British cat who wants to get even with Garfield's dad, Vic. You see, years ago, Vic ran this group of outlaw cats that used to steal milk from a dairy, but the British cat got caught and sent to the pound for 5 years, and now she's pissed at Vic. So in order to get even, she orders Vic to steal 1 quart of milk for every day she was in the pound, which ends up being like 400 gallons of milk. So then Garfield's like, what the fuck? What does this have to do with me? Why am I even involved in this at all? And the British cat's like, I don't know, dude, it's just what's happening in this movie. Go get me some fucking milk. So they go and meet up with this ox who is going to help them break into this dairy and steal all this milk. And he's like preparing them to do this big heist, but at first, Garfield and his dad aren't working super well together. You know, on account of his dad abandoned him in an alley when he was a child. So there's a bit of friction there. But then we find out that Garfield's dad actually didn't abandon him in that alley. Here's pretty much how it all went down. Garfield's dad was looking for some food for Garfield in an alley, and he put Garfield down to go search the trash cans that were like 4 feet to the left of Garfield. But Garfield, like, forgot he was there. Maybe he didn't have object permanence yet, I guess. And so he just kind of wanders away, and then the dad looks in through the window of the Italian restaurant and sees him eating food with John, and he's like, well, I guess that's his new dad now. And so for Garfield's entire life, his dad has just been creepily watching him from across the street, like sitting in a tree, peeping in through the windows of John's house, watching Garfield eat lasagna. So anyways, they're good now, and they go and do the heist, but it all gets fucked up, and Vic drives away with the milk and leaves Garfield to get captured and sent to the pound. And Garfield is pretty pissed, because that's like the second time that his dad has abandoned him. And then John somehow finds Garfield in the pound, and then Garfield gets readopted, and then Garfield's kind of mad at Vic, but he's like, wait a second, Vic probably wanted us to get sent to the pound because he knew the British lady was never going to let us go, and he knew that if we got sent to the pound, John would automatically be able to find us there. It's all part of his genius plan. I don't know how he knew any of that, but that's not the point, because now they gotta go save Vic, because it turns out the British cat didn't even want the milk at all. What she actually wanted was to kill Vic by throwing him off a fucking bridge. So then Garfield shows up and he saves his dad, and they all live happily ever after, except me, who has to live with the fact that I saw the fucking Garfield movie in theaters for the rest of my life. There is so much product placement in this movie. It actually astounds me how many companies looked at this and said, you know what's the best way for us to promote our product? Put it in the fucking Garfield movie. They name drop Olive Garden so many times in this movie, I thought the camera was gonna pan out and John's house was gonna be inside an Olive Garden the whole time. It is kind of crazy how Garfield looks like he should sound exactly like Chris Pratt. How did they get all these A-list actors to be in this movie? Samuel L. Jackson features prominently in this movie, and he might have been awake for like half of it. Ving Rhames is in this movie. Snoop Dogg is in this movie. Did all these people just commit like an Orient Express-esque group murder, and the director of the Garfield movie just kind of happened to walk by while it was happening? My favorite part of this movie was when the screen came up that said "The End," and a girl sitting in the row in front of me loudly said, "Thank God." I have never felt such a kindred spirit with a theater audience member before. 1 out of 10. Let's do Furiosa next, because I feel like I have the least to say about Furiosa, strangely. I thought it was going to be the one I would have the most to say about. Okay, so Furiosa is born in the Green Place, but is kidnapped from her home by Dementis, and her mom chases after her, but Dementis kills her mom and makes her watch, and then locks her up in a cage and basically transports her around for a couple of years as sort of his, like, trophy. Dementis eventually takes over Gastown and then trades Furiosa to Immortan Joe in exchange for supplies. At first, she's sent to go live with the wives to be raised as a wife, but she realizes that that is not what she wants, and she runs away, cuts off her hair, and disguises herself as a boy so that she can sort of blend in as a war boy, and eventually she ends up working on the war rig. This dude named Praetorian Jack is the driver of the war rig. Eventually, they sort of team up together, they become close, she learns how to drive the rig from him, she tells him about her quest to get back home, and he says he's going to help her, so they plan this big escape, but they get sent to the bullet farm where they have to fight Dementis again. Praetorian Jack ends up dying. The movie's like, oh yeah, Furiosa has to lose an arm, so they just kind of randomly have that happen. So then Furiosa finally chases down and kills Dementis, and she does it by bringing him back to the Citadel and growing a tree out of his body and keeping him alive the entire time with like a water and food drip. Kind of insane, actually. So the ending is pretty sick. The beginning of this movie really grabbed me. It's like very action-packed and emotional right out of the gate, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. but it doesn't really keep up that kind of momentum for the 2.5-hour runtime. That is just too long. There was just not 2.5 hours of story to tell in this movie. And so the result of that is the end and the middle kind of start to drag a little bit, where the movie kind of meanders, doesn't really seem to have that same focus that Fury Road does. The action sequences in this movie are really good. It's just that I think they relied a little bit more heavily on CGI than they did in Fury Road. In Fury Road, it was like when a car crashed, you could see it felt so real. It felt like a real car. In this one, there are some scenes that look really good, and then other scenes where it's very obvious that they used CGI because it was doing some impossible thing. And you can kind of tell there's just sort of a little bit less realism there, and it makes some of the action scenes a little bit less enjoyable than in Fury Road. Chris Hemsworth went 100% all in on this performance. He does a great job as Dementis. Anya Taylor-Joy does a pretty good job as Furiosa as well. I do think that I prefer Charlize Theron's version of the character, though. I think she gets the demeanor of the character a little bit better. Ultimately, the story is pretty interesting. It just doesn't feel like the movie is telling us all that much about this character that we didn't kind of already know from Fury Road. 6 3/4. The Strangers Chapter 1 was incredibly stupid. So this couple, Maya and Ryan, go to this tiny little town in Oregon to stop on their big road trip, and their car breaks down, so they have to rent an Airbnb nearby, which is like this old hunting cabin. So they get there, it's pretty creepy, and then Ryan has to leave because he has asthma and he accidentally left his inhaler in their car, so he has to go back into town. So he leaves Maya alone in the creepy murder cabin. So then she starts hearing people very clearly in the cabin, like footsteps and like doors opening and closing. So there's obviously someone in there with her, and she's like, this seems like a great time to smoke a little bit of weed. So then Ryan comes back and the strangers attack the two of them. It was very nice of them to wait for him to get back, because they could have killed Maya 1,000 times while he was gone, but they just decided not to, I guess. It's kind of a recurring theme in this movie. Ryan and Maya manage to get outside through a crawl space, and the strangers let them get all the way to the garden shed and get a gun. So then Ryan and Maya are like sneaking around trying to evade the strangers, and they hear somebody on the porch, and Ryan's like, I'm gonna shoot him. And he shoots him, but it turns out it's just some unrelated guy who was just there. I think he was like the owner of the Airbnb or something. He came back for some reason. So that guy's dead. And they're like really sad about this, and they're like sitting there mourning him for 2 minutes while his car is sitting in the driveway. And then only after like literally a full 2 minutes, they're like, oh wait, we could take his car, we could get out of here. This whole movie is just people taking a long ass time to do the most obvious things in any given situation. So they're sitting in the car and they're just like fucking around for long enough that the strangers come and T-bone them with a big Ford truck. So they split up because Ryan's leg is stuck in the car, and he's like, go, run for your life, I'm just stuck here. And then like 2 seconds later he frees himself, but now they're split up. At one point during this whole sequence, Ryan starts having an asthma attack, but he dropped his inhaler like a long time ago. So he grabs an empty water bottle on the ground and just uses that instead of his inhaler. I kind of thought inhalers were full of medicine and that's how they worked, but maybe I just don't know shit about inhalers. So Maya gets captured by the strangers. Ryan's walking around with a gun, and he actually manages to get one of the strangers at gunpoint, and he's just standing there not shooting her, and he's like, give me one good reason I shouldn't shoot you. It's like, I can't think of any, dude. This person has tried to kill you several times. I think you got a green light as far as I'm concerned. But he doesn't shoot her for some reason, and then that gives the other two strangers enough time to come up and knock him out. And then when he wakes up, both him and Maya are tied up in the cabin, and then the strangers just stab both of them, and then they leave because the police are on their way. And then the movie ends with Maya waking up in a hospital bed, like recovering from her stab wound, and then the movie's just like, to be continued. Oh wait, you thought we were done? No, there's a fucking post-credit scene. So in this post-credit scene, Maya wakes up in the hospital bed, and she like sits up and kind of gets out of bed, and then the reveal is that one of the strangers is lying in the hospital bed with her. I guess the point of the reveal being, oh, the strangers are in the hospital now too. But I feel like hospital beds are like one person wide. How did she not realize that she was lying in bed with one of the other? This is apparently the first in a trilogy of new Strangers movies, the second of which is actually going to be coming out this fall. So we'll have to see how that goes. There are so many really annoying jump scares in this movie. There's this one that's also in the trailer where you see the scary thing like a full 2 seconds before they play the loud sound. I think this movie was probably written by AI. The ending is so abrupt and nonsensical, I feel like there's no way a human being could have written that and been like, yeah, that's satisfying. This is an actual line that's in this movie.
Do you know what today is?
Today is the 3rd day of our 3-day road trip across the country.
Or our 5-year anniversary.
I've long said that At the core of every bad movie, there is a good idea, and I think that that rings true for this one as well. The idea of like a home invasion facing off against a bunch of killers sort of a movie, there's something interesting there, and I bet you probably could make a good horror movie about that, but I think you need a set of competent villains and protagonists, because both sets of people in this movie are really dumb. Maya and Ryan keep locking themselves in rooms as if that doesn't tell the strangers exactly where you are, and all these doors are wooden, so it's not like it's offering you any protection, because all these strangers have hatchets, and they're frequently shown like hacking down doors, so locking yourself in a room is not doing anything. There's a scene in this movie where they lock themselves in a bedroom, and there's a window right behind them. So I was like, oh, okay, they're locking themselves in to give themselves time to go out the window and try to run away. That kind of makes sense. No, they're just sitting there huddled together, like holding each other while the strangers hack down the door with an axe. And at the same time, the strangers seem to have no interest in actually killing these people because they keep having plenty of opportunities to actually kill them and then they just walk away. Like in that bedroom scene, the dude hacks the door down, sees them huddled in the corner, and then he just goes, and just kind of shuffles off screen to go do something else, I guess. At the point that Ryan got the gun, I kind of expected the tides to turn, but he just refuses to shoot it ever. This movie opens with a text screen that says, there are over 1.7 million violent crimes committed every year. This is the story of one of the most brutal ones. I just wish that all movies started with fun statistics like that. I wish Jaws had started with, there are over 7 million sharks in the ocean. This is the story of one of the most brutal ones. Madeline Petch, who plays Maya, did a pretty good job, honestly, but the guy who plays Ryan is so wooden, I thought a fairy godmother was gonna come turn him into a real boy at the end. 2.5 out of 10. All right, well, that was all the movies I saw this week. I'm probably not gonna do one of these next week because it doesn't look like there's that much stuff that's playing that I have any interest in, but I will be back in 2 weeks. I think we'll probably be watching the new Bad Boys movie. I haven't seen any of those. I don't know if that's a prerequisite. So maybe I'll have to do some Wikipedia plot summary research on that before I go see that. The Watchers looks pretty good, so I think I'm gonna go see that. And then for the third movie, I don't know. Maybe this is the time to solicit some comments from y'all. If there are any movies that are out right now that you think I should see, drop them in the comments, because I'm always down to go see something else. So yeah, let me know. And I guess I'll see you next time.